pick that first one, information wants to be free, I thought I'd pick on social media to begin with. Social media is driven by an assumption that information wants to be free. I mean, that's built into the business models of the companies that offer you their services. The assumption is that media should be free. For it to be free, it has to be supported by advertising. For advertising to be successful, it has to be supported by traffic. And it's also equally true if you take a slightly different path and you say for those companies to be successful, they need to know about you, they need to keep you clicking. It needs to be free, accessible, open. So you can make a case for social media being good. I mean, social media is good. I mean, I'm as enthusiastic about it as anybody else is. It makes it easy to communicate. It makes it easy to organize. It makes it easy to find people like you who you would otherwise not have met. That's something that allows people to mobilize to some extent, as we've seen in politics around the world of late. You may not like some of the outcomes, you may think some of them are good, you may think some of them are bad, but nonetheless, the idea that people can get together and speak to other people like them and can do something with their shared passions is a good thing, I would argue. So the bad part of this, as you probably are aware of, is that what you see is not necessarily what you need to see. What you see is what social media tends to think you will like, or it's people intruding very violently upon what you would like. So you get skewed results. You don't get a particularly realistic view of the world. You get something that is arranged by an algorithm. So this is the algorithm's being unbiased idea. An algorithm decides what you want to see. That's not necessarily a particularly true picture of the world. So that's one issue. You get performativity. What I mean by that is basically FOMO, is fear of missing out. You have to try and act a certain way, or you don't have to try and act a certain way, but we do try and act a certain way on social media. We try and present a certain view of ourselves. We try to be perceived a certain way. And one of the concerns that always comes into play when you talk about these things is that that pressure to perform, to conform to a certain idea about how you should look, how you should behave, is not necessarily healthy. I mean, it might be good in some respects, it might not be in other respects, but nonetheless, there is a pressure to perform. And filter bubbles, which is essentially you don't see dissent. You see what people like you tell you, you see things that you're likely to want to see, you see things that you're likely to find attractive. You don't see things that you're likely to find unattractive or unappealing or that are harsh truths necessarily. Whether that would do any good or not, whether it would change your mind, that's a follow-on question. But nonetheless, the existence of these filter bubbles at this point is, I don't think you could say it's empirically proven, but there's certainly a very strong sense that they're around, and certainly there are features of all the social media platforms that encourage them. So the neutral bit is, so what do you do about this? What do you do about the social ecology that makes that achieves some sort of balance here that you might be happy with? So there's there's a phrase ringing around at the moment about post-truth and about post-truth politics, about the post-truth world, which is that suddenly you can pick any fact you want. You can always pick up facts facts or narratives or research, spurious or other words that will back up your point of view. So essentially, we don't live in a world where truth matters anymore or facts matter anymore. We live in a world where you can pick and choose what you want and support your own version of reality. And regardless of where you happen to stand on whatever issue, I think you can probably think of how that works for circles that you know. So we could leave that. We could just let that stand and say, well, that's free speech, that's discourse, there you go. And we can live with that and the consequences in terms of an uninformed public, and say that's just something you have to deal with. There's another approach, of course, which is to impose some sort of way of monitoring these things, to induce some sort of responsibility, as traditional media have for a long time had. There is a responsibility, and there are lots of checks and balances in terms of how you ensure that what you see is at least reasonably grounded in the truth, in facts, in fairness, in balance, and so on. That's a possibility. There's a cautionary tale there, though, which is that China has just actually decided it's going to do this. So China has decided that it won't let mainstream broadcasters, or at least won't let the media report a story unless it has checked the source and it comes from a reputable place. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that we don't really trust China to do that sort of thing. And the chances are pretty good that that's actually a stalking horse for, if the party doesn't approve, you don't get to publish it. So this is essentially censorship. It becomes very difficult to know how you would define that and how you draw the line. But we do have a choice. We have a choice of going this way, which means that we never really get a grip on it, or we have a choice of going that way, which means we give somebody a grip on it, or we don't necessarily want that, want that, want that, want that, want that, want that.